What's the antidote to a distracted audience in a virtual presentation? It's actually audience engagement. Stay tuned for 7 tips to master virtual audience engagement next on Moxie Talk. Hey everyone, I'm Fia Fasbinder. Welcome to Moxie Talk, where we help you find your voice, share your message, and lead with confidence. Today we're talking about mastering virtual audience engagement. And something I hear all the time from my clients is, I feel like my audience isn't engaged, or I don't know if they're engaged because I'm presenting and I can't see them, or people seem to be turning their video cameras off and I have a feeling they're leaving. I'm not capturing their attention. And this is a real concern. Now, it was hard enough to engage an audience in person when people were trapped in the room during our presentation. But now when people can leave, go in and out, go make a sandwich, go get the mail, it's even more important to make sure that we are keeping them engaged. It's really our responsibility as speakers. And I call this the law of reciprocity, meaning if you want your audience to give you something, give you their attention and their engagement, you have to give them something first. It's important that you understand this really important law with virtual audience engagement, which means you're, as a speaker, going to give them something first in order for them to give their attention to you. Now, tip number 1 is to consider the pace of your audience engagement. Now, in person, you needed to engage your audience every 10 minutes. But now, with virtual presentations, we need to engage our audience every 4 minutes. Now, where did I come up with this number? There is a man named John Medina who wrote a book called Brain Rules. And in this book, he did studies on audience engagement. He hooked audiences up to electrocardiograms. He had a lecturer lecture at these people, and he measured their heart rate. And what he realized is for every 10 minutes of the lecture, heart rates took a nosedive. So this led Medina to think that every 10 minutes of your presentation, you have to do something to change it up. So it's not just you talking. Now, he went on further to say in virtual presentations, it needs to be every 4 minutes. So it's important that you build this into your presentations. Think about what you can be doing every 4 minutes. And I know that seems like a lot to keep your audience engaged. So what are some of those things you can be doing? The first is stories. You've heard me talk a lot on the show about stories. It's one really easy, one really authentic way to engage your audience. Tell stories or get your audience to tell you stories. Give them a prompt. Start a story, something that happened to you that then you could have them discuss it. They could tell their own stories. Stories are a great way to keep audiences engaged. Another way to keep them engaged is questions. So this is tip number 3. Ask questions. Now, with virtual presentations, this is really easy because we have a chat box. You can chat a question and then have them answer you in the chat box too. Or you can ask real questions and have your audience just by a show of hands say yes or no, raise your hand if you think this. Or you can ask them to unmute themselves and actually answer your questions. So there's 3 different types of questions you can ask. Questions where they'll type the answer into the chat box, questions where just show of hands will give the answer, and questions where you expect a real answer and you ask them to unmute yourself. So that's a really great way to keep audiences engaged. They love to be part of the presentation and part of the conversation. Polls and quizzes. Now, this is also so much easier with virtual presentations because we have built-in polling functions into our Zoom or our Microsoft meetings, our Microsoft Teams. So, use polls and quizzes to really get a pulse. Get your hand on the pulse of how your audience is feeling about your presentation. You can pre-build these quizzes and these polls, and then you can use them at certain times when you want in your presentation, meaning you're not building the poll in the middle of your presentation. You can create it ahead of time, and then when you want to use it in that presentation, you can go ahead and launch the poll or launch the quiz. And this is a great way to keep your audience engaged. Now, speaking of quizzes, gamifying information is a great way to keep audiences engaged. None of us liked pop quizzes in school, but we love it when they're fun pop quizzes that we can use in a presentation. So gamify it. Split your audience in half and have a competition for who can rattle off the top 3 things you talked about first. Gamify it in a way where maybe you give prizes. Send a Starbucks card to the first person that answers your question, right? So if you can think of a way to, instead of just giving them the information, gamify it, make it fun, make it a little friendly competition. Great way to create audience engagement. Tip number 6 is exercises. People love to do exercises, and this also gets them moving. Of course, for a presentation, a virtual presentation, most of our audience is just sitting. So if you can give them an exercise to do, and I don't necessarily mean a physical exercise, but some kind of exercise around or activity around something that you're doing or saying in your presentation. And actually this activity gets them moving, gets them writing, gets them up from their seat. This is a great way to engage them. You can also use breakout rooms when you're doing exercises or activities. So people don't have to do them alone. You can put them in groups, in partners, and have them do these exercise or activities together and then come back to the presentation at a certain time. Great way to build an engagement. Tip number 7 is visual aids. You can break up the monotony of you just talking at an audience for a long time by using visual aids, whether it's a really poppy slide, a image with a funny quote, or even a video, a short video in the middle of a presentation to shake it up. And if it's not a visual aid, some kind of music also adds to audience engagement. I love to set the mood in my virtual presentations by having music play before the presentation even starts. This helps set the upbeat, happy mood if that's what you want. If you're going for more focus, you might want more classical music or jazz music or something a little bit more mellow. But using visual aids, music, videos, great way to cut up the monotony of just having you speak for endless hours at an audience. So there you go. 7 tips to make sure you master virtual audience engagement that you can start using right away in your presentations. So if you liked this video, make sure to share it, like it, pass it on to your friends, and most importantly, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.